Well, welcome everyone. Hello, my name is Tamie Rising, founder of Pathfinder Solutions. And on behalf of our expert panelists today, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Getting Your Business to the Next Level, How to Utilize Fractional Executives to Drive Your Business Success. And thanks again for joining us today. Our objective is to bring you high-value strategies and proven approaches that, when executed, can help you advance your firm to the next level, which is why you're here, right? Getting your business to the next level, moving from where you're at to where you want to go. And we want you to walk away today, after the next hour, with one or two of the strategies that we share that you can implement immediately. That's our goal. Let me introduce the panelists to you now. First, Michael Gansman. He has over 31 years experience in maximizing valuations, building marketing and sales organizations that drive dynamic growth, and advising business owners to help them build sustainable revenue generation engines. Thank you for being here, Michael.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Dan Pinkham has over 30 years experience building and guiding teams in operational excellence, engineering, and project management. He helps companies increase their bottom lines through operational improvement, consulting, and structured problem-solving facilitation. Glad you're here, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamie. We really appreciate you facilitating today.
Thank you. And Shane Galvin, named 2019 CFO of the Year by Kansas City Business Journal, implements strategic financial strategies to significantly increase revenue and reduce company costs. And I am Tamie Rising. I am your moderator today. I'm an executive coach with over 25 years specializing in developing teams and leaders to their fullest potential to drive growth and value. I help teams build trust and work collaboratively to create high-performing cultures by design.
Yeah, and Tamie, before we move on, I just want to say how much of a pleasure it is having you facilitate this. I've firsthand worked with you, with clients, and your ability to bring an organization together by putting into place a culture by design is just remarkable. And I know you currently have a client that you've helped reduce conflict by 95%. So I just want everyone on this call to know that we got a true blessing here facilitating this call.
Wow, thank you, Shane. That means a lot. I appreciate that. Let's move on to our agenda today. We're going to ask our panelists questions pertaining to building effective sales and marketing organizations, developing strategic financial plans, and improving operations to drive increased value. Additionally, if time permits, we've got a case study that we'll be reviewing that we can look at how we diagnose issues holistically to identify, dissect, and solve problems that impact growth and profitability. So folks, this is an interactive webinar. You get to ask your questions in the chat. So feel free to do that. No one is as smart as all of us, okay? We all can learn from each other here and ask great questions. You're gonna have the opportunity to ask those questions of the panelists and just type them in the chat. We'll also have some polling questions for you today that you can share with us what your experience has been, and that'll really enhance our webinar. And last, we are going to end at 3 o'clock Central Time today. We really value your time and grateful you're here. So let's get started with our first polling question. So go ahead and answer this question. We'll give you about a minute to do that, and we'll share what we're seeing on our end as far as the results. So what prevents businesses from getting to the next level? Let me ask you first, Shane. Can you address this from a financial perspective?
Yeah, Tamie, I really feel like so many business owners are so passionate about the business that they're literally drug into the weeds every day. And so their ability to take a step back and really look at the company strategically, it's just really, really challenging. And so when I come into a business to assist, the first thing I look at is we need to put a strategic business plan together. we really need to outline what are those short-term, long-term objectives and goals. And because without doing that, you're literally just flying by the seat of your pants.
All right, thank you, Shane. So what I'm hearing is it begins, to get to the next level, it begins with a strategic financial plan.
Yeah, so it starts with the plan, but you also have to have a process to drive it. You have to have the people to execute it. Okay. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about that here in a little bit, but you also need to, when you look at the plan, you're going to need fuel to really to launch these objectives in order to deliver the business. And also you're going to need to have the process in order to measure what does success look like, whether it's the DSO or the cash flows. And you know, one thing that I think too often companies miss is, you know, the importance of having those banking or those financial relationships in order to get the funding or the cash required to deliver these projects.
Great, thank you, Shane. And Dan, how do you see it from an operational perspective?
I'm going to build off what Shane said. And I think it starts with the 3 Ps, and Shane's hit on them all. You've got to have that plan. And so from an operations perspective, that plan needs to align with an overall business plan. So what do we need to supply so that if assuming we're in a manufacturing environment, that the sales team has what they need to go out and serve the marketplace, first of all. So that those plans need to align at a high level. So it's a strategic financial plan, there's a sales plan, there's an operating plan. Those all have to go together hand in glove to have it make sense. Underneath that is a process, an execution type of process. And oftentimes that's a subdivision of a plan into you know, the high level, into a budget, into a forecast, into a monthly bucket of what we're going to execute, into a weekly bucket. And then what are we doing today to win? We want our team to be able to see, are we winning or losing? And if we're not winning, what do we need to do about it? So it's important to have a process and metrics and tracking all in place from an execution standpoint. And then finally, you have to have people to execute. So it's making sure that you have the right resources from a personnel perspective, the right people in the right seats on the bus. And so it's a challenge to go in and make sure you have all those 3 things in alignment to really make it happen.
And you're talking about a plan to scale the growth, right, Dan?
Exactly. So if you think about, you know, it seems like all businesses start as small businesses in some form or fashion. And so those processes oftentimes start as things that are done manually by people. And in order to scale and grow, you need to transition those to something that's a little bit more formalized and has some systems behind it to make it go. So then if you're going out to try and multiply your business, not just do incremental growth, you're going to need something like that as a baseline to get started. Because what you did to get to where you're at today is usually not the same thing you're going to need to do to get to that next level.
Great, thank you. And Michael, you know, we're seeing on our poll here about a 20% financial strategy and cash management obstacle. We're seeing operations at about a 30% obstacle, and the strategic and accountable sales at 20%. Can you speak to, from your perspective?
Yeah, and I'll build off of what Shane and Dan said, that it is important to have the people, the plan, and the processes, because really, especially from the people perspective, when you think sales and marketing and the company as a whole, it takes entirely different thoughts and experiences to scale a company. It's different thoughts and expertise to take you from 5 to 10 million, or 10 to 25 million, or 25 to 50 million, entirely differently if you go from 50 to 200 million. So just from the sales and marketing perspective, you need to look at it and ask yourself, does the sales organization and the approach we follow, will that allow us to scale our revenue? Leadership, do we have the right leadership in place that has the experience and expertise to actually get us there? Even up to the CEO, is the CEO of the company freed up to really work on the business like they should, or are they getting pulled in and getting mired down in the business? So that's the people and processes. And then what Shane mentioning, the strategic plan, you know, the strategic plan is very important because that's the roadmap of where you want to take your company. But included inside of there, they really need a very tactical sales and marketing plan that gets granular so people know what they're going to do. So if the strategic plan is the roadmap to get you where you want to go, the tactical sales and marketing plan is the how we're going to get there and what we have to do to make our number.
So the $1 million question, gentlemen, would you say it is who is going to get you to the next level? Do you have your dream team around you? Do you have the team with the right experience and expertise?
You know, I think that is the $1 million question. I think we're going to keep digging into that as we go along, because that's huge, having the right personnel and right expertise to get you there, people that have already been there.
Great. Let's go ahead and launch our second polling question. Make sure I've done this correctly, gentlemen. Do you see polling question number
We do.
2? Great. What initiatives do you routinely review? Go ahead and answer that question for us, participants. So all this involves change, yes? I spend my time helping others build cultures by design. And companies must change to get from one level to the next. But the thing is, they're often resistant to that change. So, gentlemen, expert panelists, what are the barriers to change from your perspective? And this time, let's start with Dan.
Thanks, Tamie. I think it's crucial that you have an environment that supports change. And that's often a challenge because as humans, we don't like to change. We like the routine, the things that we're used to. But to grow, and if we're trying to grow companies, an organization falls into that same sort of trap a lot of the times. So oftentimes you've got to create a change management strategy that should align with the other things you're trying to do. And so, for example, you want to make sure that people know why are you changing? And is it something that they can relate to? Is it a burning platform, or is it a natural extension of where you want to be? And so you've got to have a compelling case for change to be able to explain that to your team. Additionally, you want to explain what is that going to look like? So what steps are you going to go through to make it happen? And when are those steps going to happen? Because with change being as tricky for folks to absorb, you want to be as straightforward as you can to make sure it lands and you are doing what you say you will do, so they can buy into it. And then finally, all change winds up being personal in most aspects. So you want to reinforce with each of your team members the what's in it for me factor. So does the success of the company mean you're going to have job security, income, chance for growth within the company? So those sort of things to help build that buy-in amongst the team to help support that change. You also, as somebody coming in to help drive that change, need to recognize that you're going to have some standard responses from the people who are involved in that change. You're going to have 10% who sign on right away and are early adopters and are going to help you drive it. You're going to have the big middle, as I call it, those people who are going to kind of sit back and kind of see how it's going before they fully sign on. But usually you can swing those folks over. And then finally, you're going to have that real low single-digit percentage of people who are going to resist all day long and perhaps are never going to get into the change. And so you have to have strategies for dealing with all those types of folks.
And Dan, that all builds towards trust, the communication and sharing the process as you're going along.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Shane, do you see the same sort of trust issues on the financial side of things?
I do. And what I would say, though, is let me peel it back just a little bit. When I come on and I'm working with a business owner, every business owner, they have issues or red flags that keep them up at night. And every one of them have it. What it comes down to is they don't know how to resolve those red flags. And even if they know how to resolve the red flags, they have trust issues. They have trust issues in allowing their current team to assist in resolving the issue, or they have an issue with bringing on a fractional type executive and passing that workload on. And what I tell or I share with business owners is you have to learn to trust. You have to learn to let experts do what experts do. You cannot be the single point of failure in your company and its ability to get to the next level because you want to control everything. If you control everything, you're never going to get where you want to be.
So Shane, we've got a couple questions in the Q&A, so thank you for contributing these. Shane, the first one I'm going to give to you is from Jazz. How do you fund the change? Changing company direction will probably cause reduced revenue for some block of time. How do you financially bridge that time period is the question.
What I would say is, I would say yes and no. I think that you can, if you're strategic, you can adjust or pivot without significantly impacting your current revenue stream. You see companies do that all the time. So what I would say is I wouldn't automatically say by funding another product line or whatever the case is, that I wouldn't necessarily say it has to impact your current revenue. Now, in saying that, how would you fund it? Well, you have to have, and we were talking about that, you have to have a strategic plan on putting that proposal together, okay, and get it out there to allow it to get funded. But what I would say is it's all strategy, and everyone overuses that buzzword strategy, okay? And they often say, we're doing something strategically, and you look at it and you're like, that's not strategic at all. So, but I would challenge someone and say, why can't you do both? Why can you not continue with your current revenue, okay, as well as look to pivot and come over here and fund another initiative to generate additional revenue? Because remember, the more revenue you bring in as a company, you're spreading your fixed costs. So your margin's going up.
Great. We're going to move on. Thank you, Shane. So I'm looking at the polling results here. Thank you for filling out this question here. You know, sales metrics is at 21%. It's the lowest initiative that we're finding here in this poll that's reviewed. The highest is at 45%, a tie between marketing materials, changes in operational procedures, and internal spending. But sales metrics, you know, let's talk to you, Michael, about this. You know, the change that's required for going to the next level.
You know, it is, and as we've seen, you know, the economy changed drastically the last 2 years, and even decades before, business didn't change that much. You could do the same thing the same way and steadily improve your results. The reality is our client base is asking for different things today. I'll give you an example. When you talk sales, some concepts of solution selling has been around for years, where you go in with your technology or service and you solve a problem. Today, what our prospects and clients are asking for is, hey, help us identify the blind spots that we have, because we don't know where they are. So it takes a different acumen with our business development professionals to ask deeper questions and perform something we call insight selling. So that way we can help those people uncover their blind spots.
Great. And I see that Jazz has a follow-up question. I'd like to go to Timothy's question here is, and this is for the three of you, is there value in providing some employees with tenure, like Japanese firms do, to help accept change as a way to secure economic future?
That's a very intriguing question.
Very intriguing.
And I'm not sure there's a right answer, so that's why it's intriguing. I know places that I've been associated with in the past. It depends on the situation, the size of the business, the skill set you're trying to retain and help promote that change going forward. You know, at the end of the day, does going down that road make business sense for your company? And if it does, then yes. If it doesn't, then no. And I know that's kind of a little bit of a wishy-washy answer, so I apologize for that. But it gets back to what's the problem you're trying to solve, and does that make sense or not?
Yeah. I think it's a delicate dynamic in the sales and marketing perspective, because you always think of your revenue generators as performance based. You have to hit X amount or you're subject to potentially not being there. The reality is with our seasoned professionals, we're teaching them how to sell differently. And there's value in that because they have respect from our clientele. So if we can adjust how they think and adjust and improve how they execute to provide more value to our clients, even better. So in so doing, as they learn and grow new skills, that helps them provide their own tenure. Because at the end of the day, our people really are our greatest asset. So we need to utilize the ones we have to improve as best we can.
Thank you. Let's go on to Jazz's follow-up question. It's interesting here. What if you've tried delegating and trusting your staff to do more and have tried it 10 times over 15 years and it never works? So you keep reinforcing your thoughts that you have to do everything yourself. What breaks the cycle?
Another tough question. You guys are really making us work today. I appreciate that.
Dan, if you got an answer, go ahead. If not, I have a
Yeah,
thought.
just go ahead, Michael. I'll chime in.
Okay. The thought in my head is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So something else has to change. Either the approach has to change or there needs to be a benefit or repercussion change. So that way people will actually adjust and do something different. When we think of that from a sales and marketing perspective, compensation drives behavior when you're in a revenue generation mode. So if you can do it to where it benefits them and benefits the company, very good. That's the initial thought I have, that just something has to be done differently with a perceived benefit or potentially repercussion, so it will spur them to change.
Yeah, I think the more direct answer may be, do you have the right people? And if you don't, what can you do to get the right people? So is that we haven't skilled them up to the point where they can take on those roles of trust and execute to how you need it to be done? Do they have the capability, if you do train them, to even be able to absorb that and act on it? Or do you need to make some hard choices and go outside and try and find that skill set and capability elsewhere to augment your organization? And those are the tough decisions that management has to make and deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, hey Dan, I want to kind of piggyback on what you were just talking about. Is listen, if as a leader, if you've tried and the team isn't embracing change, you got to change your team. I'll tell you what, COVID alone, look at the change that it's pushing on business. And if you're not able to change and adapt with everything that COVID is throwing at business with pricing issues, labor issues, supply chain, you name it, you're going to be in a tough spot. So there has to be a point of, if as a leader, if you keep getting resistance and your team isn't, listen, if they don't have the ability to change, you're in a tough spot as a business in today's world. So you got to do something about your team, and you got to do something pretty darn fast.
Thank you, gentlemen. I was having a conversation yesterday with a CEO of a warehousing company here locally in Kansas City. And I asked him, ballpark, tell me how much you could delegate that you're not delegating. What's the percentage? And he said to me, 40%, Tamie. This is a guy who wants more family time. This is a guy who wants to travel more, take care of his health, be a part of his community outside of work. And he knows in 10 years' time, he's not been delegating. He can more. So he talked about that. And he said, it's two things that we identified in the conversation. One of them is that he doesn't have people that he trusts. He needs to get the people in the right seats for the job. The other thing is him being willing to do the delegation. Having the people in the right seats allows you to confidently delegate. And you've got to shift your mind to say, I'm going to take the time for the long-term benefit to delegate this and train or do whatever it takes to do that. But it is a mental shift as well as getting the right people.
And I think that to add on to that, Tamie, if you do get those people there who you can trust, and you don't delegate, they're not going to be there very long. So you
That's
have
right.
you have to acknowledge that and take some steps to make sure you are showing them respect, and they can and they're demonstrating their value, and you're demonstrating your commitment to them by allowing them to take that on.
You know, Tamie, one of the things I wanted to touch on too, just super quick, as a leader, you have to look internally. Is the trust issue you as a leader, or is it not you? Is it really you have a good reason not to trust your team? And if it's you, I think I'm just going to throw it out there. You need to get a hold of Tamie, who's facilitating this call, and let her work with you, because she's going to be able to help you with some of those kind of trust issues. But if it's not you, and you have good reason not to trust your team, well, you need to do something about the team. And that's exactly why we're on this call today, because we're talking about how to bring on fractional experts to help you with your business, experts that you can trust. So anyway, that's what I had, Tamie.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to our third polling question now. I'm launching it here. How much time do you spend in the weeds in your business every day? That's a big question. How much time are you spending in the weeds in your business every day?
You know, Tamie, I wish that we would have had like the panelists, we could have guessed what this is going to pop up, because I'm pretty confident I know what the results are going to be.
Well, let's give it another minute or so, and I'm going to move on here and say, Shane, we'll start with you. What are some of the ways fractional executives attack the problem and bring value to the table?
Well, I can tell you from a fractional CFO perspective, and before I get into it, I want to make sure individuals are clear that when we're talking about fractional CFO, we're not talking about a fractional CPA. Okay, we're not there. There's a huge difference between accounting and really bringing on that financial expert that can help you get to the next level. So in saying that, when it comes to bringing on a fractional CFO, what are you going to get? Clearly, we've talked about, you're going to get a strategic financial plan. You need it. The second thing, you're going to get someone that can hit the ground running. You're going to get that expert that expert's going to ask you the right questions. You're not going to have to just be asking the right questions. They're going to help you ask the right questions, because they're going to bring a different perspective, a valued perspective to the table. In addition, I would say they're going to be able to help you when it comes to your funding and growth challenges. They're going to bring to the table those relationships that they've built, whether it's with bankers or other industry experts that can help you in your company. And I always say, Tamie, business owners should always have an exit strategy. Even though you might not be looking to sell in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you should be operating your business as if you were going to be exiting the business in 3, 4, 5 years. And finally, too often we don't think about it like this, but how many individuals listening to this are going to be in a position where they might want to acquire another company? Are they thinking through that? What's it going to take?
Great. Thank you, Shane. Results are coming in on the polling question, but I want to move to Dan, and we'll get to those, results in a minute. From the COO, fractional COO perspective, can you speak to that?
Yes. So it's a yes and in terms of follow up to Shane. From a COO, oftentimes you have you're coming into an organization that was owner founded, and that person happens to be a visionary who said, yes, this is what we're going to do in the marketplace. They might not be the best at executing. So a fractional COO can come in and be a change agent, take over execution of the day-to-day, drive those systematic changes, those process updates, help you drive bottom line savings. I know I've been places where we've gone in and helped save 5+% on an EBITDA basis, which is usually pretty significant to the success of a business. That person could come in, help make that change, very quickly, weeks rather than months, can look at the activities the organization's doing and help lead to better results in the near term. They usually come in with a different perspective, having been at different stops along the way in their career, and help bring in some new energy with that perspective. A COO can help not only teach and execute, but as we were talking about team and change before, they can help determine if you do have the right people in the right seats. So that's the sort of thing that a COO can come in, really help free up the CEO to be looking at those next level items that Shane talked about. Are you gonna divest? Are you gonna acquire? What are you gonna do to grow the business and make it more successful as you go to that next step?
Great, thanks, Dan. And Michael, what about you from a fractional, is it CMO perspective?
Yeah, so it's a chief marketing officer, chief revenue officer, and sometimes it's combined. So just
Okay,
building on what Dan said is being that advisor to the CEO with a certain lens or filter, looking at the sales and marketing revenue generation perspective to be that visionary to help them with that, and be that true sales champion and evangelist leading that team. It's so important to have the different experiences, expertise, and success in scaling companies so you can bring that. If you haven't done it, you can't bring it. You can't fake it when you're in the sales and marketing mode. So very important to help assess the current staff and figure out what we need to do to elevate their skill sets so we can sell differently. So recruiting, training, and coaching that sales team and sales leader if they have a sales manager or VP in place, depending on size of the firm. It could be the CEO and sales manager advisor, not just the sales team leader, but can advise them to help them grow as well. So that's huge experience that can be brought with a fractional CSO.
Jason was asking earlier about financially or bridging, the gap. And what I'm hearing, gentlemen, is that, this helps, the fractional executives help bridge the gap. Yes?
Shane, go ahead.
Yeah, it does help bridge the gap. And one of the examples I'd like to throw out there, Tamie, is, I think most individuals, they watch football, and too often you see a team that's losing, they bring in new coaching, and all of a sudden the next year they're a playoff team, and everyone's like, what happened? It's the same talent. What I would say is there's so many positives to bring on a fractional executive. They can be that lightning rod of energy, that additional energy that it really takes to help really get a team refocused and positioned to do well. We can bring on that different, that I guess you would say almost like a game book, playbook, in order to deliver the success, no different than as in with a football team. So I think they're, bringing on that fractional employee, it can be that lightning rod. That's what I want individuals to take away. They can be that lightning rod, that new energy, that new perspective that an organization really needs.
Let's get to the polling results here, but Jason's brought in a really interesting comment and question. He says he went through the process of being acquired a few years ago. It did not work out in the end, but I have a feeling that if I had fractional executives as my leadership team, rather than just me, that the larger acquiring company would have had a sense of more value. Have any of you been involved in an acquisition as a fractional executive? Great question, Jason.
Tamie, that is a great question. And short answer, there are current clients that I'm advising on how to have the right structure and plan in place specifically for exit strategy so they can be acquired. And there was one 2 years ago that I worked with as a fractional VP of sales that we were getting acquired, even though I was outside part-time. So it came down to, did he have the right plan that I helped him put into place? From here's what your finances look like, here's your sales processes, here's the revenue that's increasing, here's your technical landscape, here's your processes formalized and written down. There was a 5-part plan that we put together specifically for the exit strategy, which maximized their valuation, and the acquisition was successful.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, Michael. I've been part of several instances where coming on, working with a client, putting in the whether it's technology, better processes, figuring out how to squeeze some of those expenses to drop more to the bottom line. Doing that kind of stuff without question position the company to be in a better position in order to get a better payout. So I think typically bringing on a fractional employee 12, 18 months before you're looking to maybe sell makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and Shane, if I could add to that, the ideal time frame is even before that.
Sure. Yeah.
A lot of CEOs and owners of companies, they don't think 3 to 5 years in the future like they need to for an exit strategy, and they get to that 2-year mark, and it's kind of all hands on deck. So ideally, if you can be earlier than that, much better. That way, you have more consistent track record and a higher valuation.
Thanks, Michael. Dan?
Yeah, and while I don't have the fractional executive experience going through a merger and acquisition, I have been very involved in the aftermath of M&A in terms of how do you put two operations together and make them work, from common culture to establish a new culture, to how do you make how do you consolidate factories when you go through an acquisition. So there are some lessons there to be learned from if you think you are going to go down that road, either as somebody who is preparing to sell, or especially somebody who's preparing to buy. And how do you go ahead and create that new organization going forward?
Okay, panelists, what's your guess on how much time you spend in the weeds of your business every day? The majority under 4 hours, 4 to 8 hours, or 8 to 12?
I still think it's 8 to 12. If they're being honest, I bet you it's 8 to 12.
I'm leaning that way, and so it becomes that you're doing the strategic stuff while you're asleep, and your brain is churning.
Yeah.
So here's our results. We had 84% participation. Under 4 hours is 55%.
Oh, that's better than I thought.
4 to 8 hours is 36%.
Mm-hmm.
And 8 to 12 is 9%. So,
Interesting.
yes.
Interesting.
That's where I work a lot with CEOs on helping them move out of, what keeps them in the weeds mentally, and getting from the 8 to 12 hours down to under that 4. I'm going to end the poll for question 3. We're going to move on to our 4th and final question and launch that now. It says, I have the confidence, I have the right people to get me to the next level. This is a yes or no question. So here's the case. The case is the manufacturer is a family-owned, owner-operated company that has experienced significant growth over the last 15 years. The manufacturer operates in a fast-changing, highly competitive industry, manufacturing and selling parts to the aftermarket automobile industry. The approach is, as you can see from the description, the company has issues around their finance and accounting systems, making it difficult to make database decisions. Inventory costing and controls accuracy issues are obscuring true costs, impacting the ability to understand real margins and profitability on a customer segment and mixed basis. So let's move on to the attack. How would you attack this situation if you were brought in as a financial or fractional executive?
If I could jump in here, Tamie?
Yep. Yeah.
So I think it goes back to what we've already talked about. Initially coming in, a team like what you're seeing here is going to go through some type of whiteboarding exercise to say what are really the issues we're trying to deal with here. So we're going to come in, we're going to ask lots of questions. We're going to, at the end of that session, try and ensure we're fixing the right problem. So it's really around problem definition. So we're going to go out and look at, we're going to have that whiteboard with a team. We're going to go out and walk around and look and see what our eyes tell us. And then we're also going to do an analysis of the numbers. So where do we think, where do the numbers tell us we have issues? And so you're getting, somebody in Shane's shoes, and he'll talk to this, I'm sure, in a minute, is going to be really focused on how do you get from the top line to the bottom I'm going to be looking at where do we have costs that don't match up. So in this case, you saw there's some issues around, do we really have the right unit costs around particular items that we manufacture? And are we in alignment? Because if we aren't, we're going to be making bad decisions and Michael's going to be going out and selling the wrong stuff, or we're not going to be maximizing margin. So all these things go together. So it's important to make sure we're defining what those issues are up front in a logical, structured way, so we can go out and attack them in a logical, structured way with people and process.
Great, thank you, Dan. Shane?
Yeah, this is my take, is when I look at this kind of case study, they need experts to hit the ground running. And that's where, again, we talk about fractional employees. And what I would also say is when you look at the cost of a fractional employee versus if you were to say, hey, I want to bring a Dan, Michael, and Shane on. Hey, guess what? I hope you have about $1 million a year in additional payroll. Okay, that's a lot of money. So that is a big perk when you look at this case study. Why would you want to bring a fractional employee on? Well, I'm telling you from a CFO standpoint, the cost is it's big. And there's a big cost differential between throwing out $1 million for 3 executives versus a fractional, maybe 1/5 of that, or make it 200,000. So the cost component, it's very, very material. And so what I would say in this case study as well is, so I touched on it. You need someone that can hit the ground running. I talked about the cost, but again, you want someone that can quickly bring in those relationships to help get the right funding for these initiatives to generate the additional revenue. So the company's very, very successful. So that's my when I look at this case study, it's all about if they had the right experts, which they would, if they brought on fractionals, they could turn their company around rather quick.
Yeah, Shane, I can add to that. Great points. The only thing I would add is with the CEOs that I talk with, one of the reasons we found they're looking at fractional is a common theme is they don't have a true advisor to openly share their challenges with that is an unbiased advisor. Too many of them talk to their friends, their family, if they can't talk to their employees, but they need someone to give them that unbiased advice and guidance in different realms. That's hugely important to CEOs.
Yeah, it sure is.
Great. We've got a question from Jason again. He says we don't have to answer his questions. He could do this all day. I love it. But he does have a really interesting question. Does this team offer services and solutions as a team, as a package, or does each person only offer services individually?
I'll take that one, Tammy. And the short answer is yes, we offer as a team. Shane and Dan and I have a colleagueship and a friendship. We each bring different experiences, but we come packaged together. And we've even packaged together with Tammy being our leading cultural change agent for clients. So yeah, it can be packaged together. As we keep going, if it breaks down, you just need one, the others can disengage and one stays engaged. So we can be packaged or individual depending on the situation.
And I think to add to that is we're pretty well networked. So on top of that, if we see a need beyond what our skill sets are, we're going to go out and find them. We're going to find those people in our networks to come in and provide that expertise. So you're buying a set of connections when you're dealing with a team like us, not just the people you see in front of you.
Yeah, Dan, and I want to kind of touch on what you were talking about there. If we're not the answer, we have the network that is, and so. But too often, when we go in and partner with an owner or executive team, they don't know what they don't know, and so that's where we come in and we can help provide some of that direction because of our experience.
This is an interesting polling question, and Michael, we'll go to you in just a minute, because it's stated in the term of I have the confidence that I have the right team, but we can also challenge the word here and maybe think about the experience of the team. Does that team have the experience to get to the next level? So it could be asked that way too. Michael?
I think there could be a perception or misperception in the market of, what do you mean I have a part-time advisor or a part-time executive? The reality is that concept's been around for over 100 years. Your accountant, your attorney, now you can actually get, and they're doers for you. You can get a strategic advisor that has been there and built companies on a part-time basis, which enables you to have a bit greater return on investment.
Yeah, and what I like to always throw out there too is, I like using the word partner, and I know Dan and Michael, you both do as well. When we come on, we get that we're a fractional executive, but we don't take that approach with you. We take the approach that you're a partner, and we're here to help you deliver so you can take it to the next level.
Yeah, and I think we didn't touch on this much. We talked about it in terms of financial risk, because you can lower your financial risk by bringing on folks like us on a fractional basis. You're also lowering really operational risk. And Shane, you touched on this from the financial side. You bring on a full-time person, there's a lot of cost that accompanies that in terms of salary, benefits, et cetera. You don't have that with us. And you also have the opportunity to make sure that having this type of role makes sense to your organization. So it gives you a chance to quote unquote, kick the tires in terms of getting this type of support. And the reality is there's not always a match made in heaven, and we're pretty easy to say goodbye to. Obviously, as Shane mentioned, we want to partner with people and make sure that it's a successful relationship. But by having this sort of arrangement, it really does lower the overall risk to the company.
So thank you, gentlemen. I want to wrap this up now and ask you each briefly to share, for those that are watching now and those that are going to be watching later, from each of you, and we'll start with Michael, what is the key takeaway from your perspective? And then we'll move on, but to the other panelists. But the question is, for those watching now, those watching later, what is the key takeaway from this webinar that you want to leave them with?
The key takeaway from my perspective is, you have executives with decades of experience that have scaled companies that see things differently, and can actually help you on a part-time basis to get you to the next level, pure and simple. We have different lenses we look through, but each of us as C-level executives see it holistically as well too.
Thank you, Michael. Shane.
My takeaway is stop going to bed at night worried. There's a point in time where you have to reach out. Let's have that whiteboarding session, discuss your business, and let's partner together to take you to the next level. So, that I think it's really that simple. I mean, there's so many positives to working with a fractional group. We talked about the experience, hit the ground running, the network, the cost component. Again, stop with the worry and let's do the whiteboarding session.
Dan.
Yeah, I think it's incumbent on us to be sitting in the client's shoes and to say, what is going to make this company successful? How is it going to get to the next level? And what additional skills and expertise are needed to be brought in to help make that happen, to make sure we've got a successful company. I think on top of that is making sure we're defining what we want that end to look like, or that continuum to an eventual end, and make sure that we are setting in place the plan, process, and people to get there. Folks with our type of experience, that's what we offer to companies to help them be successful. So as clients, that's the lens we're going to look through. We want you to be successful.
Yeah, Dan,
Thank
just
you.
imagine, just really quick, if a business owner was able to feel extremely just fantastic about their sales and marketing strategy, that is really, really going to be able to generate the revenue that they're expecting. Okay. Just imagine from an operational standpoint, if they were able to drive efficiency, put in a new product line, let's first say, what would the impact be to the bottom line?
Thank you.
Shane, there's a final anecdote. A client I worked with over the last year, just on a part-time basis, and we improved their sales approach, their top line sales, and they were not a manufacturer, but we improved internal operations. Their net income went up 98%, only on 11% top line sales growth. So there was a vested interest in their success.
Thank you, gentlemen. Michael and Dan, Shane, we appreciate your time today, offering factual advice or experience and results from high value approaches. And participants, we really appreciate you joining us today and asking such great questions. Speaking of questions, if you have any further questions and would like a conversation to dive further into this, Michael has put his contact information into the chat. You can reach him at 913-991-3671 or at michaelg@mastermindkc.com. So have a great rest of your day, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.